The elevator hummed as it climbed through the glass tower of Reed and Morrow Communications, slicing the morning sunlight into fragments across Olivia Grant's reflection. Her makeup was precise, her white blouse crisp, her heels measured in their rhythm. From the outside, she looked composed, the image of a woman who'd mastered control. Inside, her stomach churned with the unease she couldn't name. It had been 2 weeks since the company's merger. 2 weeks since Vanessa Reed, the woman whispered about in every hallway, admired and feared in equal measure, took the helm as creative director. And now, Vanessa had called Olivia to her office for a personal discussion. No context, no agenda, just that sharp email subject line. Meeting at 9:00 a.m. Mandatory. Olivia entered the executive floor. The air smelled faintly of eucalyptus and ambition. Through the glass walls, she could see the city sprawling below, restless, unforgiving. Vanessa's assistant gestured her in. Vanessa Reed stood by the window, her silhouette sharp against the skyline. She didn't turn around when Olivia entered. "Sit," she said. Her voice was cool, deliberate. Olivia obeyed. Her pulse quickened. "I've reviewed your performance over the past 3 years," Vanessa began, flipping through a portfolio of printed reports. "You're efficient, creative, and persistent. That's rare. You're up for promotion, aren't you?" "Yes," Olivia replied softly. "Director of Strategy." Vanessa nodded, still not meeting her eyes. That role requires integrity and the ability to mend bridges. She paused, finally turning. Her gaze was piercing, her smile faint but loaded. "You know Ethan Cole, don't you?" The name hit like static. Ethan. The one she hadn't spoken to in 5 years. The one whose heart and career she'd quietly broken. "Yes," Olivia said, after a long breath. "We worked together in the past." "Worked together," Vanessa echoed, almost amused. "That's one way to put it. He's now leading Cole & Partners, one of our potential collaborators. Except," she tilted her head, "he refuses to work with us, specifically because of you." Olivia's throat went dry. I didn't know that." "Oh, but you do know why," Vanessa said, stepping closer. "He told me everything. The campaign, the stolen pitch, the night you disappeared before the awards. You buried him, Olivia, professionally and personally, and now he's in a position to return the favor." Olivia's voice trembled. "What is this about?" Vanessa's expression hardened. "You want your promotion? Then fix it. Go to Ethan. Apologize. Publicly if you have to. He's agreed to meet, but only if you reach out first. Do that, and your position is secure. Refuse." She closed the folder with a sharp snap. "And your career ends here." The silence that followed was suffocating. The ticking of Vanessa's minimalist clock sounded like a countdown. Olivia looked at the woman before her, elegant, untouchable, dangerous. "I'm not apologizing to him," Olivia said finally, her voice steady but her hands cold. Vanessa's smile was small and cruel. "Then I'll accept your resignation by end of day." Olivia rose, every movement deliberate, every emotion buried deep beneath years of practiced poise. "You don't need to," she whispered. "I quit." She turned and walked out. The elevator doors closed behind her with a hiss, sealing away the only life she had known for a decade. Down below, Manhattan pulsed with noise, taxis, sirens, fragments of conversation. But for Olivia, it all faded into silence. By the time she stepped out into the cold drizzle, her reflection was gone from the mirrored glass above. All that remained was the woman beneath the facade, soaked, trembling, free. For the first time in years, she didn't know what would come next. She only knew that something, or someone, would come for her soon. And that karma always kept, its own clock. The rain had turned to a soft mist by the time Olivia reached the street. Her umbrella hung limp at her side. She didn't bother opening it. Midtown shimmered with the kind of gray that erased edges, buildings dissolving into fog, people into shadows. She walked without direction, her resignation letter still fresh in her inbox, unsent, yet already final. By noon, the news had spread. Reed and Morrow's Slack channels buzzed with speculation. Did you hear? Olivia just walked out. Vanessa made her do something insane. I think it's about her ex, Ethan Cole. In the corporate jungle of Manhattan media, gossip traveled faster than truth. Her phone pulsed with notifications, texts from colleagues, a missed call from HR, even a direct message from a junior associate. Is it true what Vanessa said? Olivia silenced the phone, slid it into her coat pocket, and kept walking. She ended up at Bryant Park, where the scent of wet grass mixed with roasted coffee from a nearby cart. She sat beneath a tree, watching drops slide off the steel benches. Around her, people hurried to meetings, clutched lattes, typed on phones. Life didn't pause for anyone's downfall. She tried to convince herself that she'd done the right thing, that pride was better than submission, dignity stronger than fear. But beneath that fragile reasoning, guilt throbbed like an old wound. Her mind replayed Vanessa's words. You buried him, Olivia. 5 years ago. Ethan Cole. The campaign. The night everything fractured. Back then, she was still young enough to believe ambition could justify betrayal. Ethan had been her partner, in work and in love. Together, they'd built something rare. A campaign pitch that could have launched both their careers. But when Reed and Morrow offered her a solo promotion, one that required her to take credit for the project, she hadn't hesitated long enough. He found out the night of the awards. She never forgot the look on his face. Disbelief. Then anger. Then that hollow silence when he realized she'd chosen herself. The next morning he was gone. Olivia blinked, forcing the memory away. The drizzle turned heavier, blurring her view of the city. Somewhere above the skyline, Vanessa Reed probably stood in her corner office, sipping espresso, watching everything crumble just as she planned. By evening, Olivia returned to her apartment in Chelsea, a modern, minimal space filled with soft light and silence. She poured herself a glass of wine, left it untouched on the counter, and sank onto the couch. Her laptop chimed with an incoming email. The subject line read, Termination Confirmation, Reed and Morrow Communications. Her chest tightened as she opened it. Corporate courtesy, standard phrasing, no warmth. At the bottom, a brief note. We regret your decision. Please return your company property by Friday. HR Department. She stared at the screen for a long time, then closed it. Outside, the city pulsed on. Somewhere, Ethan Cole was probably thriving, building his empire, untouched by the ghosts she still carried. But fate, she thought bitterly, had a cruel sense of symmetry. Vanessa's sudden interest in Ethan wasn't coincidence. It was a thread she'd pulled deliberately, and Olivia knew something Vanessa didn't. Ethan wasn't just her ex. He was also the one who could destroy Vanessa if he chose to. That night, unable to sleep, Olivia scrolled through her old folders. Campaign drafts, emails, voice memos. Her fingers hovered over one recording, a forgotten voicemail Ethan had left years ago, never deleted. She pressed play. You think this industry rewards integrity, Liv? It doesn't. But at least I'll know I didn't sell my soul for it. The message ended with silence, but it echoed through her apartment like a confession. She turned off the light, curled into the couch, and whispered to the empty room, I didn't sell it, Ethan. I just lost it somewhere along the way. The city outside glowed like a fever. Neon signs, car horns, laughter spilling from bars. Somewhere in that chaos, karma stirred, unseen but certain. Tomorrow, her name would trend on industry boards, and by the weekend, every connection she'd built would start to crumble. But for now, Olivia let the darkness take her, because falling, she realized, was the only way she'd ever learn what it meant to rise again. The next morning arrived in fragments, light slicing through the blinds, the faint hum of traffic below, the heavy taste of last night's wine still on her tongue. Olivia sat at her kitchen counter, her laptop open but untouched. The resignation email was gone, sent hours ago in a moment of quiet finality. Her phone buzzed occasionally, missed calls, messages, pity disguised as concern, but she ignored them all. Instead, she opened an old folder named Coal Projects. It had been untouched since 2018. Inside were the ghosts of another life, proposal drafts, concept sketches, meeting notes written in her own hand but co-signed by his initials, EC. For years, she'd avoided this digital tomb, pretending the past had dissolved like spilled ink. But now, with nothing left to lose, she let herself look. The first file opened with a slogan, "Truth Connects." She remembered that night. The rain outside, the flicker of candlelight in Ethan's apartment, the smell of burnt coffee and graphite pencils. They had been building a campaign together for a healthcare brand, something raw, something real. "People don't buy honesty anymore," Ethan had said, rubbing his temples. "Then we'll make them feel it," she'd replied, scribbling ideas across the table. That was them, reckless, idealistic, unstoppable, until they weren't. Olivia closed her eyes and let the memory unfold. It had been a Thursday night. They were at the agency, the city glowing beneath their floor-to-ceiling windows. Ethan was pacing, his tie loosened, his hair falling into his eyes. "They want us to pitch next week," he said, his voice hoarse. "But Reed and Morrow reached out. They want you." "Us," Olivia corrected. He stopped. "No, Liv, just you. They offered you a solo creative lead. You take it, they'll drop me. You don't, we might lose everything." She had said nothing then, only stared at him, the weight of her own ambition pressing against her chest. She'd wanted to tell him she'd say no, that love mattered more. But love didn't pay rent in Manhattan, and ambition had always been louder than her conscience. When she finally took the offer, she told herself it was strategic, that she'd come back for him later, that success could be shared once it was secure. But when she won the award, his idea, his script, his sleepless nights, he wasn't there. Just the echo of his absence, sharp as broken glass. The next morning, a single note waited on her desk. "You took everything we built and called it yours. Don't ever come back." Olivia exhaled shakily, the memory fading. Her apartment felt colder now, as if the past had opened a window she couldn't close. She stood, pacing. 5 years, she whispered to herself. 5 years, and it still feels like yesterday. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a name she hadn't seen in ages. Mark Turner, a former colleague. She hesitated, then answered. "Mark? Liv. Jesus, I just heard. Vanessa really made you quit?" "She didn't make me," Olivia said quietly. "I chose to." Mark hesitated on the line. "Look, you should know something. Vanessa's not just power tripping. She's involved with Cole and Partners. There's talk about a merger, and she's using you as leverage." Olivia's breath caught. "Leverage for what?" "For credibility," he said. "Ethan still hates Reed and Morrow, but if she can mediate through you, make you apologize, she looks like a miracle worker. It's all politics." Olivia laughed softly, bitterly. "So I'm a pawn." "Yeah," Mark said, "and you just walked off the board." When the call ended, Olivia stood by the window, looking down at the wet street below. A food truck steamed at the corner. A couple argued under an umbrella. The city moved on, indifferent. Her reflection stared back, older, sharper, lonelier. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like the woman who had everything to prove. She felt like someone who had finally seen the cost of pretending. She whispered his name, the way she used to when the world was softer. Ethan. And somewhere out there, in another high-rise office, she imagined him hearing it, not as forgiveness, but as the echo of a truth neither of them had escaped. Because ghosts, she realized, don't haunt places. They haunt people. And she was still haunted. The week unfolded like a slow, unraveling thread. Every morning, Olivia woke to the same hollow silence. No meetings, no emails, no calendar reminders flashing across her phone. For 10 years, her worth had been measured in deadlines and deliverables. Now, her days stretched endlessly, a kind of freedom that felt more like punishment. The media world, however, hadn't forgotten her. By Tuesday, her name appeared in a trade newsletter. Insider shakeup. Olivia Grant resigns amidst Reed and Morrow leadership tensions. Subtext. Sources suggest conflict with new creative director Vanessa Reed. It didn't matter that the article was vague. The whispers were enough. PR was an industry built on perception, and Olivia knew how fast reputations could rot when left undefended. She spent hours scrolling through LinkedIn, half expecting messages of support. Instead, she found polite distance. Colleagues who had once toasted her victories now silent or cautiously liking the announcement post as if touching a wound without committing sympathy. By Wednesday, the real blow came. A friend forwarded her an internal memo from Reed and Morrow. Effective immediately, Vanessa Reed will oversee all client transitions, including former Grant accounts. We thank Olivia Grant for her service and wish her the best in future endeavors. Her clients, her life's work, reassigned overnight, erased. She stared at the email until her eyes blurred. Then she laughed, quietly, bitterly. Karma, it seemed, didn't need to wait for anyone's permission. Meanwhile, in another part of Manhattan, Cole & Partners was on the rise. Ethan's new agency had just landed a major deal, ironically, with one of Reed and Morrow's long-standing clients. Olivia read the announcement in Adweek, her fingers trembling slightly as she scrolled. Ethan's photograph stared back at her, confident, composed, wearing that familiar half-smile that once made her believe they could take on the world together. But there was something else beneath that calm, a hardness she didn't remember. He looked older, more deliberate. The kind of man who'd been betrayed and had learned to weaponize it. Olivia leaned back on her couch, the glow from her laptop flickering across her face. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd left to protect her pride, and now she was watching him rise on the ashes of everything she once controlled. That night, she went out, alone. A small bar in Soho she and Ethan used to frequent after late client pitches. The bartender didn't recognize her, which felt like mercy. She ordered bourbon, neat. 2 drinks in, she noticed her reflection in the back mirror. Tired eyes, lips slightly parted, a faint smudge of mascara. She thought of Vanessa Reed, sleek, poised, untouchable, the kind of woman who'd learned how to turn cruelty into currency. And Olivia realized Vanessa's empire was cracking too, because karma, as it turned out, was contagious. By Friday, the industry rumor mill had shifted again. Screenshots leaked from an anonymous source, internal Reed and Morrow emails suggesting ethical irregularities in Vanessa's client negotiations. Twitter threads speculated on corporate cover-ups, contracts forged in haste, and one particularly viral post accused Vanessa of sabotaging a merger to secure control. Olivia watched it unfold from her apartment, the glow of social media chaos reflecting off her wine glass. She should have felt vindicated. She didn't. Instead, she felt empty. This was the same machine she had once mastered, spinning narratives, shaping perceptions, crushing competitors. Now, watching it devour Vanessa, she saw what she had been blind to before. No one ever wins in this world. They just survive longer. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Ethan Cole. I heard you left Reed and Morrow. Vanessa's making a mess of everything. Guess karma finally clocked in. Olivia's heart stuttered. She hadn't seen that name light up her screen in 5 years. She typed, erased, typed again. Finally, she sent, "You always said it would." The dots appeared, then vanished. No reply. She set the phone down and stared out the window. Manhattan glowed like a fever dream, lights reflected on wet asphalt, sirens wailing somewhere distant. In the glass, her reflection blurred against the skyline, as if she were both inside and outside her own story. She whispered to the city below, not sure if she meant Ethan, Vanessa, or herself, "You can't outrun what you owe." And for the first time, she understood, karma didn't hit hard because it punished. It hit hard because it remembered. The invitation arrived on a Thursday morning, elegant, understated, the kind of heavy cream cardstock that smelled faintly of money and control. The Manhattan Creative Industry Gala honoring vision, integrity, and innovation in media. Saturday, 7 p.m., the Plaza Hotel. Olivia almost laughed. Integrity! The irony was too perfect. For a moment, she considered ignoring it. But something in her, pride, defiance, maybe the faint ache of unfinished business, wouldn't let her. Reed and Morrow would be there. So would Cole and Partners. And for the first time since walking out, she wanted to be seen, not pitied. By the time Saturday arrived, the city was draped in gold and glass. Cabs lined the curb outside the plaza, headlights shimmering across the marble facade. Olivia stepped out, her black dress cutting clean lines against the night. Her hair was swept up, her lips red, her eyes unreadable. The air smelled of champagne and ambition. Inside, the ballroom pulsed with conversation, the clinking of glasses, the soft hum of a jazz quartet, the kind of laughter that always carried undertones of rivalry. She moved through the crowd like a ghost among the living, catching fragments of gossip that trailed behind her name. "That's Olivia Grant, right? The one who quit?" Heard Vanessa forced her out. "She looks fine, though. Almost better." Almost. She spotted Vanessa near the bar, radiant in emerald silk surrounded by executives. Her laugh was sharp, her eyes calculating. When their gazes met across the room, Vanessa smiled, slow, deliberate, poisonous. But Olivia didn't flinch. She turned away, scanning the crowd. And then she saw him, Ethan Cole, standing by the far window, talking with a client. The years had sharpened him, his jaw a little harder, his posture a little prouder. The easy warmth she remembered had cooled into something precise, controlled. He wore a charcoal suit that looked tailored to the man he'd become. Success, sealed and untouchable. For a long moment, she couldn't move. He turned slightly, his eyes finding hers. A flicker of recognition, not surprise, not even anger, just that quiet acknowledgement of something inevitable. The air shifted. He excused himself from the conversation, walked toward her. The crowd seemed to fade, the music thinning into a heartbeat. When he stopped in front of her, it was as though 5 years collapsed into a single breath. "Olivia," he said. His voice was calm, even. But the name sounded heavier coming from him, worn by time. "Ethan." A pause stretched between them, fragile but full. "You look, well," he said finally. "So do you," she replied, though the words felt too small for what she wanted to say, for everything unsaid between them. He smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. I heard about Reed and Morrow, Vanessa's little ultimatum. Word travels fast, Olivia said. In our world, it never stopped traveling, he said. He glanced around, lowering his voice. She used my name, didn't she? Olivia hesitated, then nodded. She wanted me to apologize, publicly, said it was the only way to keep my job. Ethan's jaw tightened. Typical Vanessa. They stood there in silence, the ballroom spinning gently around them. For the first time, she noticed the lines at the corners of his eyes, not from age, but from restraint. You could have called, he said softly, before all this, before she got involved. I thought you wouldn't want to hear from me. He looked at her, really looked at her. Maybe I didn't, but that doesn't mean I wanted her to use you. Something in his tone cracked the distance between them. The noise of the gala dimmed, the lights softened, and suddenly it felt like the old days, those long nights spent pitching ideas, arguing over taglines, stealing kisses in the elevator before deadlines. I never meant to hurt you, Ethan, she said quietly. He let out a small, humorless laugh. Intentions don't change outcomes, Liv. You still did. She looked down. I know. Then, something unexpected. He sighed, not out of anger, but exhaustion. You're not the same person anymore. I can tell. Neither are you. He smiled faintly, this time more human. Good. Maybe that's the point. A photographer's flash went off nearby, scattering them in light. Olivia blinked, and when her vision cleared, Vanessa was approaching, a glass of champagne in hand, her smile shimmering with performance. Ethan, Vanessa purred, I didn't realize you two had reconnected. Ethan's expression didn't change. Just catching up. Lovely, Vanessa said, her gaze cutting toward Olivia. Closure is healthy. Don't you agree, Olivia? Olivia met her stare without blinking. Closure isn't given, Vanessa. It's earned. The smile on Vanessa's face faltered, just slightly, before she excused herself. Ethan looked back at Olivia, a glint of amusement in his eyes. You never did know how to play nice. Guess I learned from the best. He chuckled, a sound that almost felt like forgiveness. Almost. As the night faded, Olivia left the ballroom alone. Outside, the city breathed cold air and neon light. Her heels clicked against the marble steps, each step echoing with something between regret and relief. She didn't know if she and Ethan would ever speak again. But something had shifted. The ghosts weren't gone, but they were quieter now. And somewhere behind her, in that glittering room of liars and dreamers, karma kept moving, quietly, elegantly, preparing its next turn. Sleep had become a stranger. Olivia lay awake night after night, the ceiling above her painted in shades of insomnia, gray, blue, the faint orange flicker of city light bleeding through the blinds. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw Ethan's face at the gala, that guarded calm, that flicker of something unspoken before he turned away. It wasn't guilt alone that kept her awake. It was the weight of everything she had buried, the choices, the silences, the truths she never dared to tell. By the third night, she gave up pretending. She brewed coffee at 2 a.m., wrapped herself in a blanket, and sat before her laptop. A blank document stared back at her. The cursor blinked like a slow heartbeat. She began to type. Ethan, I don't know why I'm writing this. Maybe because I owe you a truth I never said out loud. Maybe because I'm tired of carrying the version of myself I built to survive. The words came slowly at first, then faster, unraveling in messy confessions. You were right. That night, when I took the deal, when I walked away, it wasn't ambition that drove me. It was fear. Fear of being small. Fear of not mattering. Fear that I'd only ever be someone's assistant in someone else's shadow. Reed and Morrow promised me the world, and I believed them. But all they gave me was a mirror, and I didn't recognize what I saw. She paused. The city hummed outside, sirens in the distance, a car door slamming, the faint music of a rooftop bar drifting down. I told myself I'd make it up to you, that someday I'd tell the truth. But then the promotions came, and the silence got comfortable. I kept your name in my drafts, like a wound I didn't want to heal. Every time someone praised me, I wondered if they knew whose words they were really applauding. Her fingers trembled. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just to be remembered truthfully, not as the woman who betrayed you, but as the one who finally understood what she lost when she did. She stopped there. The letter was too raw to send, too honest to delete. She saved it as unsent 01 and closed her laptop. The next morning, Olivia woke to chaos. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. Notifications, mentions, news alerts. At first, she ignored them, until one headline made her freeze. Vanessa Reed under investigation for ethical misconduct at Reed and Morrow. The article unfolded like poetic justice, whistleblower testimonies, leaked invoices, and confidential emails revealing that Vanessa had fabricated contracts, manipulated client data, and silenced internal complaints. Her empire was crumbling. Olivia stared at the screen, her coffee cooling beside her. She wanted to feel triumphant, wanted to believe that the universe had balanced its scales. But instead, she felt nothing. Only exhaustion. Because deep down, she knew she and Vanessa weren't so different. They had both played the same game, bending truth until it broke, dressing deceit in ambition. The only difference was who got caught first. Her phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. Ethan Cole. You see the news? Vanessa's done. Olivia hesitated, then replied, I saw. Guess karma finished its round. Ethan. Not finished. It just changes direction. She stared at his words, unsure what he meant, until another message came. I know she used you to bait me, Olivia, but I also know you walked away instead. You didn't have to. Her throat tightened. Maybe I did, she typed back. Maybe walking away was the only honest thing I've done in years. There was a long pause before his final reply appeared. Maybe it's time to stop walking. Olivia set her phone down slowly. Outside her window, the city pulsed with life, indifferent, relentless, alive. Somewhere out there, Ethan was part of it. Maybe watching the same news. Maybe thinking the same impossible thought. That some wounds didn't demand closure, only understanding. That evening, she printed the letter she'd written unsent 01 and folded it carefully. She didn't know what she'd do with it yet. Burn it, maybe. Deliver it. Or leave it unread forever. But for the first time in years, she felt her pulse steady. The unraveling wasn't destruction anymore. It was release. She poured herself a drink, watching the city lights flicker like small confessions against the glass. And in that quiet, she whispered to the night, not to Ethan, not to Vanessa, but to herself. Whatever comes next, I'll face it without pretending. And somewhere, the silence answered, soft, forgiving, infinite. The city felt different that morning, sharper, louder, as if everything was on the verge of exposure. Olivia watched from her window as Manhattan pulsed below her. Horns, steam, fragments of conversation that never quite reached meaning. The world went on, indifferent to the small reckonings happening inside human hearts. On every screen, Vanessa Reed's downfall was front-page news. The New York Times ran a headline that made Olivia's stomach tighten. From power to pariah, the fall of PR titan Vanessa Reed. It was brutal. The article detailed everything. falsified expense reports, coercion, emotional manipulation of staff, client deceit. The same ruthless precision Vanessa once wielded to destroy others had turned on her, and somehow Olivia's name was there too, buried deep in the story. A footnote. Sources confirm Olivia Grant, a former employee, resigned earlier this year after an internal conflict with Reed. Grant declined to comment. That single line burned more than it should have. Declined to comment. It made her complicit in silence again, the very silence she'd promised herself to leave behind. She turned away from the screen and paced. The letter to Ethan. Unsent 01 sat folded on the kitchen counter, untouched since the night she wrote it. She'd tried to forget it, but the paper had a gravity of its own. The truth was simple. Vanessa's destruction wouldn't cleanse her own. If anything, it magnified it. They had both built empires on ambition and half-truths. The only difference was who had been caught first and who had confessed. Her phone rang. The caller ID made her freeze. Ethan Cole. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she answered. Olivia. His voice came quiet but direct. You've seen the news? Yes. She called me yesterday, he said. Vanessa, before it broke. She wanted me to vouch for her, to say she didn't coerce anyone. I refused. Olivia closed her eyes. Of course she did. There was a pause. But she also said something about you. She told me she pushed you out because she thought I still cared. Silence. Do you? Olivia asked. The words escaped before she could stop them. Ethan didn't answer immediately. I don't know, he said finally. I cared enough to be angry, enough to remember, enough to wish things had gone differently. His honesty hit harder than blame ever could. I wrote you a letter, Olivia said quietly. Didn't send it. He exhaled softly. Then maybe you should tell me instead. She hesitated, then spoke. I'm sorry, not for quitting or for what happened with Vanessa, but for everything before that, for stealing what wasn't mine, for pretending I didn't love you enough to fight for us. I told myself it was survival, but it was cowardice. You were right about me. Her voice cracked on the last word. Ethan was silent for a long time. She could hear the faint hum of his office in the background, the low murmur of someone who had learned to bury emotion beneath professionalism. I wasn't right, he said at last. I was hurt. There's a difference. She swallowed. So what now? Now? He let out a tired laugh. Now we live with it. We move on. But maybe we stop pretending the past didn't happen. He paused, then added softly, There's a coffee place on 7th and Bleecker. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., if you want to talk. No cameras, no nostalgia, just truth. Olivia's breath caught. Okay. When the call ended, she stood there for a long time, the silence pressing in around her. Outside, the sky began to turn the color of old silver, one of those New York mornings where the city looked fragile, almost human. She took the folded letter, slipped it into her bag, and whispered, Tomorrow. That evening, as night fell, Olivia walked through Madison Square Park. The trees had begun to thin with autumn. She watched the lights of the Flatiron Building shimmer like something holy and broken at once. Her reflection in a darkened window startled her, not because she looked older, but because she looked honest. The armor was gone. For the first time in years, she didn't want redemption. She wanted reckoning, the kind that didn't ask for forgiveness, but offered understanding in its place. Because maybe that was the point of karma all along. Not punishment, not vengeance, just a mirror. And when she looked into it now, she didn't see the woman who took what wasn't hers. She saw the one who was finally ready to give something back. Tomorrow, she would face Ethan, not as the woman who betrayed him, not as the one who fell, but as the one who stayed standing after everything else collapsed. The morning was brittle and clear, one of those New York mornings that made everything look sharper than it should, every sound more intimate. Olivia walked down Bleecker Street with her coat pulled tight, her steps deliberate, her heartbeat impossibly loud. The folded letter was still in her bag, the corners soft from too much hesitation. She found the cafe easily. It was small, tucked between a bookstore and a florist, with fogged-up windows and the smell of espresso drifting into the cold. Ethan was already there. He sat by the window, his hands around a coffee cup. Eyes distant. He looked real. Not the curated version from trade magazines or panels, but a man, tired, alive, still carrying the quiet dignity of someone who'd been broken and rebuilt. When he saw her, he smiled, not with warmth, but with understanding. The kind of smile you give someone who once knew every version of you. "Hey," he said simply. "Hey." She sat across from him. The silence was almost comforting. The city outside blurred behind the glass, people hurrying past, a dog barking, a cab horn fading in the distance. He gestured toward her bag. "You brought it, didn't you?" She blinked. "What?" "The letter," he said, his tone soft but certain. "You've always written before you spoke. I figured you would this time too." She let out a small laugh, half nerves, half surrender. "You remember everything." "Not everything," he said, "but enough." For a moment, they just watched each other, strangers shaped by the same history. Then she reached into her bag and unfolded the letter. The paper trembled slightly in her hands. "I don't know if I should read it." "Then don't," Ethan said. "Just tell me." She nodded, inhaled, and began. "I'm sorry, Ethan, for all of it, for what I did, for who I became after. I used to think ambition was survival, that being chosen meant being worthy. But I see now that every step up that ladder was a step away from myself, and away from you." Her voice wavered. "I didn't just betray you. I betrayed the part of me that believed in something real. You were that part." Ethan said nothing. His gaze didn't waver, but his hand, the one holding the cup, tightened just slightly. "You don't have to forgive me," she continued. "I'm not asking for that. I just needed to say it finally, out loud, so I could stop running from it." The words hung in the air, fragile, final. After a long pause, Ethan leaned back in his chair. His eyes softened, though his expression stayed unreadable. "You know," he said slowly, "I spent years being angry at you. Told myself I'd never let it go, but anger gets heavy after a while. It starts to feel like another person in the room." He looked down at his coffee. "I don't think forgiveness is the point anymore. Maybe it never was." Olivia swallowed. "Then what is?" He met her gaze. "Understanding. Letting the truth exist without trying to rewrite it." She nodded, tears threatening. "I can live with that." Ethan smiled faintly. "So can I." They sat there in silence again, not awkward, not empty, just quiet. The kind that follows when two people have said everything they needed to and nothing more. Outside, the sunlight had started to break through the buildings, spilling across the table between them. Olivia watched it touch her hands, her cup, the folded letter now resting flat on the wood. She slid it toward him. "You can keep it," she said. He hesitated, then shook his head. "No, you wrote it for yourself. Keep it." Something in that gesture, gentle, firm, final, untied a knot inside her she hadn't realized was still there. When she finally stood, Ethan rose with her. "Take care of yourself, Olivia," he said quietly. "I will," she replied. Then, with a small, genuine smile, "You too." She stepped out into the cold sunlight. The wind carried the smell of roasted coffee and wet asphalt. The city moved around her, relentless, uncaring, alive, and for once, she didn't feel small inside it. At the corner, she looked back through the cafe window. Ethan was still sitting there, looking down at his cup, his face half lit by the morning. For a moment, she thought of all the things they'd been: lovers, rivals, strangers, mirrors. Then she turned and walked away. Each step felt lighter. Because some apologies aren't meant to heal what was broken, they're meant to free the ones who were. And as she disappeared into the city's endless pulse, Olivia Grant finally felt what she'd been chasing all along. Not success, not redemption, peace.